deliver. So we're very thankful. We're going to switch it up a little bit. We've had a lot of athletes on. We've had a lot of business people on. But today we're going to get into a little bit different of a segment. Again, this is a podcast for anybody. And I think it's very interesting to hear, for me as a young person that's trying to get into business, from people of all different outlets. And this is definitely an industry that I don't have any experience in. So I'm extremely excited to hear Mr. Frank Filippelli's perspective on my 15 questions. So this is Frank Filippelli. He's our special guest for today. He's a retired special agent and criminal investigator. And I'll let you do the rest. So Frank Filippelli, what we do is we bring on our guests, and the first question we ask them is what's their elevator pitch. So who's Frank Filippelli?
Okay, that's a long, big, wide question. Who I am? My whole career for 40 plus years, I've been a criminal investigator. I started out with the Internal Revenue Criminal Investigation Division. I was there for 27 years. The first 13 years, I was in the Brooklyn office. And all of my experience with IRS was in New York. And I did mostly tax fraud cases. After that, I went over to Manhattan. I was in the Manhattan office for the other 14 years. And I did more money laundering cases, and that was more international type things. And I got to work a lot more with DEA, the FBI, Customs back then. Now it's Homeland Security. And a little bit more international type cases. And I became a money laundering expert witness. I actually testified as an expert witness in some narcotics trials, talking about how the funds were moving was basically laundering, and basically summarize some of these criminal cases. One of the more interesting ones was one where a rabbi was using his account to launder money for the Colombian cartel. Wow. And he tried to fight it based on the fact that it was religious, and the government didn't have the right to go after his bank account. But I was a summary witness in that case. He lost that fight to keep that information out, and he was convicted. So after I retired as a special agent, I was hired as since I was in money laundering field, Prudential Financial in Newark hired me. And I could have stayed another 10 years with the government, but they offered me good money, and I was living in New Jersey at the time, so I took the position as director. And that lasted 8 months, unfortunately. That was my one dealing with the outside world. And what happened is, after 6 months, they gave me a write-up, and they said, "Boy, you're doing great. We're going to increase your duties." I'm saying, "Okay, in the government, that's a good deal." But then what happened is, Prudential was going public, and they decided to knock off the compliance department, which I was in, completely, and give it to Wachovia Bank. And so they lost a whole floor was gone. So all 30 employees. So 2 months later, on my 8th month, they called me in and they said, "I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go, but you're a first-year person. We never give bonuses, but you did a good job. We're giving you a bonus." And I said, "Yeah, but I thought this was going to be I was used to the government. You gave me good evaluations." And they said, "Sorry, this is the outside world." That was it. So unfortunately, I didn't miss a day. I went right to my old friends at the New York City School Construction Authority. They were former special agents that were there, and they brought me right over. I also gave them one of their biggest cases. And basically, the New York City School Construction Authority, they investigate all the workers that work on city schools, any contractors, all the ones that do dirty. Basically, all of them were dirty. It's just a matter of finding the ones that were worse than the others. So I was fortunate there, and I stepped into a case which gave one of the biggest cases ever. And I thought I was going to be set there for a while. And meantime, I was asked to go for an interview for a contractor position in New Jersey. And I didn't really know much about the diplomatic. It was the Department of State Diplomatic Security Service. And they're basically the criminal investigators that all do protection for all the dignitaries, and they also do criminal investigations. So they wanted me to help them with their criminal program. So I got the job, and I was there for 12 years, and that was pretty exciting. I was pretty much a mentor to the agents. I did a lot of training. I had over 1,000 agents that I trained over the years, and I worked big cases. I was just very fortunate to get Investigator of the Year for 2015 and 2016, and there was just some really interesting cases, and I really enjoyed working with the agents and kind of mentoring them. Yeah. And then my daughter ended up becoming a nurse here in California, and my old contractor, who originally brought me over for the Department of State, was no longer the contractor there, but he had the Department of Defense over here in California. So he gave me an offer of where my office location, and the furthest one closest to my daughter was the one here in Valencia, Department of Defense. So I came over here in Valencia, and I worked there for 2 years, and then I decided to go out on my own and do different investigations. And I've done some contracting work for attorneys, for other people, and right now I'm actually doing work for an insurance company doing investigations. And it's been a long career, but I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, that was a lot. I appreciate the information. You're definitely someone that I want to be on your good side, for sure. But how did you initially get into that field?
Well, even when I was in high school, I always wanted to be an FBI agent. I just always liked solving crimes, and to me that was always exciting. And I remember I came as a teenager here to California where my uncle lived, and I had him take me to the FBI office, and I got the 10 most wanted, and that was just something exciting to me. And ironically, my father got a career. He started in IRS also. He was actually, there was a long story where he was in another position prior to joining IRS, but long story short, his friends were in IRS, and he came over as an IRS agent. And my father spoke Italian, so they ended up using my father as an undercover agent. So he actually went undercover for about 2 years, and because he spoke Italian and they needed somebody in that position. And his investigation was regarding one of the mayors of Philadelphia who was tied to organized crime, and it was so my father did that for 2 years. And after that, he was an actual agent and went into management. So that was a perfect opening for me to want to come over there anyway. And my father, one of the things that for IRS criminal investigations you need accounting. And I wasn't keen on accounting, but he forced me to take accounting, and I majored in it, and it got me the job. So, and in 1975, I was interviewed and got hired. I like that.
That's great.
In sports.
What challenges have you faced, or it's one experience that has made you who you are today? Personal, career, whatever you choose.
One of the challenges was that every case is different, but I enjoyed the game of figuring things out and eventually solving these crimes or puzzles and working with people. There was just so much involved in working. One of the big challenges, though, throughout career, besides chasing after the bad guys and dealing with their attorneys, which was a challenge enough, was, believe it or not, you had infighting with other agencies. And I'm working with my agency, and all of a sudden the other agency wants to take over the case because, for example, like the FBI, we're the biggest in the country. We want to use our control. We have the same, and sometimes they have the same laws that they're actually enforcing. So there were a lot of internal battles, and they were challenges to me. And when I went to the State Department, where I was more over their criminal division, I won most of those battles because I had a good reputation with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they knew that because asset forfeiture was where you get the proceeds of the crime, and every agency wants to be the leader for asset forfeiture because that means that they get credit for it. Doesn't go into their agency; it goes into the Treasury Fund or what other funds, but they get credit for it, and it's just big on your career. So that was the biggest battles I had, probably over that. And I was lucky with this Department of State. We lost the very first one because one of the managers decided to let the other agency do it, and they blew it. We didn't get any money out of it. So after that, I never lost another battle with that, and I'm very fortunate to get a lot of asset forfeiture through my career with the State Department. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges I had.
The next question is, what's been your most exciting project?
Probably one that probably was the biggest was that one where I told you about the agent that I mentored, and he became one of the best agents that I've ever worked with. Well, that case started on, we had a fraud case. We got a fraud referral, and they said this other agency didn't do much on this other case, and the guy did it. So we went out and we re-interviewed these people and said, yeah, the crime is definitely still out. I don't know why the other agency dropped it. When I had that agent that I mentored, we got the one guy, and this guy basically was he did fake paperwork for anything you wanted to do, fake marriages, and custom, anything you needed. And he had all kinds of things. He would do fake marriages, and he'd do fake divorces, and he'd make money all the way. And he would hook up people, and he would get money and all the paperwork. So we ended up, it was so bad with him, we got him, we arrested him, and we got him to cooperate. And cooperate, we got him to wear a wire, and he went out and he got somebody else. So he flipped people, and this was back in 2007 or 2008. And he flipped people, and unfortunately with the Department of State, agents they're foreign service agents, so they could only do 2 or 3 years in a field office, and they had to either go overseas or do something else. So that agent I had, it was great, and we just finished that part, and we he flipped on 2 other people, and he had to move on. So I had to constantly recycle new agents. So I was the only one in, and eventually this case built. We had kept on flipping people, flipping, getting them to cooperate, and after and I was really good at flipping people and getting them to cooperate and telling them, you're screwed. Your best way, you can be in jail for the next 10 years. You want to help us, and we can put a letter, saying that you worked with us. So from 2007, we finally got it to the point where we flipped a bunch of people, and then we had this one guy who worked for a visa for a school that basically you paid. It was it looked like it was a legitimate school, and foreigners would pay to attend it, and you'd get student visas. Well, they were giving out student visas like water because they weren't real. It wasn't a real school. They had a room like this, and they'd list 100 people that were in this classroom. So it was totally fraudulent. And they would only kick you out of the school if you didn't pay, not if you didn't attend. So we ended up taking down that school, and with the person that we finally flipped at the end, he wore wire, got stuff off the computer, and we had a case that they couldn't get out of. And we ended up taking down the 5 officials, the top key officials that had the school. We seized over $17 million, and we shut the school down completely, and those people did time, like 5 to 7 years for fraud. So to me, that was one of because it started in 2007 and it ended like in 2016. That was 9 years, and I was the only constant person there. Even the U.S. attorney switched. So to me, it was very rewarding because I saw the whole thing through, and I was like the quarterback for that. But with other agencies, I've had some other big cases too. Like I won't go into the cases, but I'll just like in IRS, my biggest case was a Puerto Rican drug dealer we seized $26 million from, and we got him to cooperate. I got him to flip, and we went to other cases. So that
when they flip, they are completely free, or how does it work?
It all depends on what it is. This drug dealer in this Puerto Rican who we got the $26 million from, he was convicted for running a continuing criminal enterprise, CCE, which is a life sentence. Because of his cooperation, and he actually did he went above and beyond. He got it knocked down to, I believe, like 10 or 15 years. So he had to work for us. He basically had to give us information and had to be truthful, and even had to testify. And he testified against his banker and his lawyer, and they got convicted for laundering his money. And along with, he gave information on the 18 people that worked under him, and they all got sentenced. And then he also gave information on one of his cellmates who was involved in one of the bombings in New York. And also he gave up his source of supply, a drug dealer from Puerto Rico, who was 5 months away from beating a statute of limitations for dealing drugs. He was one of the and we arrested him 5 months before it would have expired. So this guy got a lot of he got a lot of credit for that, and he got his sentence reduced. Now, if he had less time, like it was one of his underlings, and the underling cooperated, and say he was facing 5 years, then it all depends on the. We write a letter, and the judge basically doles out the sentence.
That's very interesting. Next question: what's the biggest misconception people make about you?
And my wife is the one that started this. Is that she thought I was a nice, easygoing guy. She thought I could. She didn't think that I'd ever get that into a case or like really go after somebody. But one day we're still dating. I had a case on a jeweler in the Diamond District who was pretty dirty. We went to trial with him. He got convicted. But I was interviewing a key witness on the phone, and this guy said he was going to cooperate. Then he lied to me, and he made up all this stuff. So I just let him have it on the phone. I just, you son of a bitch, and
that is tough.
One of the biggest cases we worked was this William Underwood, who was Mr. Untouchable in Harlem, and he had people. He would give out golden hatchets for any time his people killed somebody else. So the one guy had like 8 hatchets, and it was kind of stupid because they were able to get those guys off the streets. But he was untouchable, and he went to Columbia University. He was a well-educated black man. He actually had a group called Slave that he was the manager of, and that gave him the reason that he could be driving anywhere at 3 a.m. and be justified if they picked him up. Oh, I've got managing my group. But we eventually arrested. The New York Times put out an article how it's a shame that these drug dealers get away with things, and this guy was Mr. Untouchable. And that's like the kiss of death. Anybody ever done that? So we ended up taking him down like a year later, and I was there on his arrest, and we were doing searching his apartment. So as we're waiting for people to come and process and move him to everything else, I'm talking to him, and I said, "Look, I'm not even going to write this down, but I'd just like to know what you were." You were such a success. You were an intelligent person. Why did you have to do all this other stuff? You didn't need to do this. You were making money, legitimate money. They had a gold album, Slave, and everything else. Why'd you do this? What you got out of it? And having ordered, he says, I'll tell you what. He says, because I'll deny it if you ever write it down. Or I said, no, I just don't know for my own sake. He says, I like being the man. It's the power. He says, having control over everybody's life, being the man, being the most important guy. That's what motivates me. He says, that's what, I like that. He says, the other stuff is fine. I like managing groups, but people know me, and I love that power of being the man, and there's nothing that's more than that. I don't take drugs. I like this power of people's lives and the fear that they have.
Throughout your experience, what's been, after all the things that you've seen, why do people do that? Do you think it's one of the things we talk about real life church? We were in a segment one time, probably before you even moved out here. I just remember this from when I was younger. They talked about, are you born bad or do you develop bad, right? Do you over time?
Right.
How would you answer that question?
I don't know, because I go to Rusty's church, and so are people innately born good and they turn bad? I'd like to think that everybody has the possibility, but it depends on so many factors, where you grow up, your parents, if you have money, you can become evil, but then there are some people, why is this kid at 3 years old trying to kill cats and do things, so, I mean, there's a factor that goes like that, too. I like to think that it's environment plus just situations that turn people bad, but, why do people do crime and some people don't? Why does one brother rip off a bank, and why does the other guy become, a religious leader? I think that it's something in your makeup and the combination of every factor, I think. But the biggest motivation in life is, when they say in crime, is greed. And that's what I've seen. I mean, people that's a big motivating factor. Motivating factor.
Last couple questions. What is a motto that is important to you?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, that's me. The golden rule is like everything. I mean, on work, in life.
Last question, then we have one bonus question. So how do you want people to think of you / remember you?
Remember me as a passionate person who loved every minute of his work, loved his family, tried to do the best he could. Nobody's perfect, but in life, I try to do as much as best I can, and I tried to help as many people as possible through my experiences and sharing that with everybody else. And I felt that, through my jobs, and that was one of the key points. And I'm actually preparing a book on different scams. So I'm hoping that it will help the elderly plus just other people. And I'm in the first year of doing it. It's going to take me about 2 years to finish this.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Let me know how I best can serve your needs.